it's Erin with Hail Varsity. I am joined by Greg, also of Hail Varsity. He has returned, although I have heard you would like to see more Jacob in some videos, so do not worry, Jacob fans. We will have him back. In fact, we've just been talking recently about how we can create more of these videos for you, so I heard you loud and clear.
Okay.
Jacob is king. And I'm not saying that, I'm saying that sincerely.
Okay.
People like Jacob. So I don't know what that says, that none of you said anything positive about me. You were just upset that I wore an orange sweater.
Oh, that's always fun.
It's always fun. But anyway, I digress.
Maybe I'll be king this week.
Maybe you'll be king. I can be king. No, we do appreciate you as always. We do. I will say it is always fun to kind of see the banter and different things in the comment section. So thank you for engaging and for just letting us know that you're watching and giving your questions and everything. We usually say this at the end, so let's just get it out of the way now. If you have questions, comments, whatever, you are welcome to leave them in the comment section of this video. We do check them out, and sometimes they show up in other places on our website or on YouTube. So keep asking questions and having conversation. But we did have post-practice availability today. It was defense day. We heard from defensive coordinator Erik Chinander. I don't quite, he's like what, frontline coach?
Defensive fronts
coach. Because
Mike Dawson.
Mike Dawson,
Yeah.
outside linebacker and defensive line.
Yep.
So, we heard from both of them as well as a few different players. So let's just start here. We are almost toward the end of spring football, which is wild to think about. And one of the big things that keeps coming up is leadership.
It does.
And it is something that Erik Chinander talked about today, because he is looking for leadership from a new group of players. He has lost, when we talk about that defensive front, he has lost a lot of that defensive front. So he's looking for new leaders to step up, not only with their play, but also with the way that they just engage and work on the team. So what was your takeaway?
Yeah, I think that my takeaway from the day overall was that came up with everyone. I feel like everyone that I heard from today mentioned trying to step into a leadership role. Braxton Clark mentioned that. Jamari Butler actually mentioned being a better teammate, more of a team player. So he took it the other way in how you received that. But so did Miles Farmer. Miles Farmer talked extensively about the fact that, it seems like it was just yesterday that he was a freshman and that he was learning behind guys like Markel Dismuke and Deontay Williams. Cam Taylor-Britt was in the room. He had a lot of veterans, speaking of guys that have now left the team, to learn from. And now he is now slid into that role, and he's having to hold guys accountable, all at the same time as him trying to get better, but then also get used to these new teammates because there's so many new defensive backs. He's in a really interesting spot for this coming season.
Yeah, the leadership thing was really interesting. I didn't get to hear everyone that you were talking about, so it's kind of it's fascinating to hear that they're all it kind of feels very cohesive. So far throughout spring, we have heard similar things about competition, same thing about leadership, and it's been pretty consistent from group to group, day to day. It doesn't really matter. We're hearing very similar things. I do know Isaac Gifford. I spent some time listening to him. And he was talking about, how do you fill the leadership role left by JoJo Domann? And he basically said it's too early at this point to know exactly who that is filling the role. They're all working really hard. They all want playing time. Speaking of which, he said he's prominently playing at the nickel spot. He could play safety, has gone and played a little safety throughout spring, but not much. He's pretty much been focused on the nickel spot. And this just kind of goes to show when we're talking about competition and leadership, when he was asked, what would you rather play? What you enjoy? He said it doesn't really matter to him. He just wants to be on the field.
Yeah,
so whatever spot gets him on the field, gets him playing. It was also, again, another thing we've heard a lot about is just these players, how their winter conditioning and just their general conditioning has gone. He said when he arrived at Nebraska, he was about 195. Right now he's between about 205, 210. He said his weight fluctuates quite a bit, but he feels good about where he's at. Unless the coaches tell him otherwise, he feels he's at a good spot to play, a good weight to play at, because it fluctuates, but not enough to have it be a huge concern.
Right.
So again, it sounds like from a conditioning, we heard that from Yant last week, that a lot of them.
Newsom mentioned that as well today.
Yeah, they're all taking their conditioning. I don't know. I wasn't a part of it last year, so
I
it's
wonder
hard to
if part of that too, though, is what happens with the level of attention to that you have to pay when you play, when you know you're about to play, is what I'm trying to say. So it's now totally different, that all of those guys are potentially in line to see a lot more snaps. So when you go through winter conditioning, knowing that, and there's no more JoJo ahead of you, there's no more running backs that are as many running backs that you're fighting for that spot with, or Masai Newsome case, Ben Stilley, and some of those guys are now gone. Like, you're going to be counted on now. Yeah. So it's a totally different thing for you on how you approach your day-to-day.
I do think that has made a big difference, and not to say that these players didn't care about this in the past, but I do think there has been a little bit of a, and I am not talking, I know a lot of people talk about how spring is very, like, everyone wins the spring.
Right.
I'm not talking about how this necessarily translates to, results on the field. I'm just talking about a wake-up call in the sense that at least when, you hear someone like Ant talk about it and realizing, he is the person that has to be dependent on soon. It is no longer, you aren't relying on other people. It is you are that person. So I think that's a really good point when you're starting to see, okay, if, Nebraska was in a really interesting situation, as many teams were. They had these, how old was Deontay Williams? 25?
25, yeah.
I mean, you had not only these veteran players, but they'd been on the team for a while. They were older. They're now gone. And that was what that COVID year did, is it provided this almost insane depth and experience for teams. And now if you're somebody who was behind these players for a couple of years, you're like, it is now my turn.
Yeah, this is what I have to do to be out there.
Yeah, so I mean, I do think that that's kind of probably why we are hearing a lot of the same. And it really just keeps, the one thing I hear from so many of you, I know we all hear it, is none of this matters until we see results on the field in the fall. And the reality is you're not wrong. We can give you all of these, tidbits that we've heard, whether it be about the leadership, the competition, this or that, but it really is, you can't quantify it until you see it on the field this fall. But I will say I did really appreciate, to go back to it, I really appreciated Isaac Gifford's perspective when asked about that when asked that JoJo question, to say it's too early to say is kind of what you want to hear at this point in spring, because isn't it a little too early to say?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, a work in progress is essentially how that should be, especially when it comes to replacing so many big personalities and strong leaders within your team, especially on that defense. They lost guys at basically every level of the defense. The inside linebackers are really the only ones the top two that are back intact. Everyone else is replacing multi-year starters, right? And so it should probably be that way.
And if you were saying, oh, we're good, then you kind of start to go, then what were you doing the year before? And that defense, did do really well. So this is now time for so many of these new players, not new, but newer to
being a bigger role.
Yep. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they are able to do. We are less than 2 weeks out from the spring game at this point. I do think the one difference for us in the media this spring is we have not seen any practice, and I'm not anticipating to see any practice. The first time we see anything for ourselves is going to be the spring game, like so many of you. So, it is also tough on this part where it's we hear things, but
we can
really
only tell you what we hear.
Yeah, we really are just telling you what we hear, but it'll be interesting to see, at least at the spring game, how maybe that, what do we gain from that experience? We'll find out. But for now, we will be back on Wednesday with even more. It's Offense Day on Wednesday, correct?
Should be. We flip it back around.
Sometimes we get a stray, offensive coach with the defensive player. Sometimes we get, every so often. So pretty sure it's Offense Day, and we'll be back with even more. So thank you, as always, for subscribing to this YouTube channel, for commenting, liking everything. We do appreciate it. We even appreciate the friendly banter. We do, as long as you're nice. And don't tell us to get out of here. We'll bring Jacob in.
He'll be back at some point.
I did say last week, though, that...
Oh, wait, did you make promises?
I was like, well, Greg's working. He was like, oh, so it's implying that I'm not working.
Oh, okay.
So apparently I insulted him in the process of inviting him to do the video. So we do appreciate Jacob. We need to get Steve back in here too.
Yeah, it hasn't been a while for Steve.
We'll just keep rotating. But again, thank you so much for watching, for being a part of this Hail Varsity family. Go subscribe. We'll talk to you later.